First, there's the issue of taxes. On December 31st, tax cuts that were enacted in 2001 and 2003 will expire. And unless something is done, income taxes will increase across the board from an effective tax rate of 15% to 39.6% at the top, depending upon one's income bracket. Capital gains taxes will increase and dividend taxes will be taxed like regular income. State taxes will revert to the exemption of $1 million and a top rate of 55%. Business exemptions will be dramatically reduced, and this debate is further complicated by whether to adjust the alternative minimum tax for inflation, by the way, a $30 million price tag, and various corporate tax extenders that will add yet another layer of new taxes. You've heard all the arguments. The president, though backing down a bit over the past 10 days after the elections, has indicated some willingness to compromise on his heretofore steadfast view that the current rates should be allowed to expire for households earning more than $250,000 a year, period. Republicans have been virtually united, and some more moderate to conservative Democrats are of the view that increasing taxes during a recessionary period or even the remnants of a recession is not good economic policy in that it impedes job creation and growth. Related to this taxing or revenue side of the equation is the fact that the government is only temporarily funded through December 3rd. Operating under a continuing resolution, it means that the government is being funded at the same levels of the most recently concluded fiscal year, September 30th. The translation on that, the government didn't pass a budget. And as a result of it not passing a budget for the current fiscal year, they have not acted on the annual 13 or so appropriations bills that are annually required to fund the government. Let's see, some other obstacles remain on the horizon. On November 30th, doctors will be forced to take a 23% cut in Medicare reimbursement unless Congress figures out a way, which by the way they always do, generally through increases directly to the deficit, to patch, or what is called a doc fix, to patch the cut in payments to physicians. And another 6.5% cut is scheduled to take effect on January 1st. Now, the anticipated cost of this so-called doc fix is roughly $1.4 to $1.6 billion a month. Another area of concern, the debt ceiling. Will it be raised prospectively during the lame duck's consideration of funding for the government? Or more politically challenging, will Republicans in the House, especially the new ones, want to start out by going to Congress and voting for an increase in the nation's debt capacity when many believe they were sent to D.C. to slow the growth of government? The president wants Congress to extend unemployment insurance funding. If Congress doesn't act by the end of December, up to 2 million Americans will lose long-term unemployment benefits. And then there's the Department of Defense authorization bill, which includes dealing with don't ask, don't tell, which is also winding its way through the courts. Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants to provide one-time $250 payments to Social Security recipients that won't receive annual cost of living adjustments this year because there has not been a cost of living increase. And then there's the Paycheck Fairness Act that will change the factors that human resources professionals will be able to use to compensate their employees. The House has already passed this one. And then there's the DREAM Act that changes our immigration laws such that some illegal immigrants will have the chance to remain in the U.S. if they spend 2 years in the military or college. Or the employee card check bill that makes it easier for workers to unionize without a secret ballot. Okay, enough of the challenges. That's the lame duck, by the way. What do I think will happen? As things currently stand, I believe Congress will not allow any of the current tax rates to expire, and they will extend them at least until 2012. I cannot make an argument that they're going to extend them permanently. I cannot make an argument that maybe the $250,000 and below will be extended permanently, but it is my view that they will extend them at least until 2012. Put another way, the election results may lead the Democrats while still in control of both houses and the White House, to deal with the tax cuts during the lame duck session. If not, Republicans will be, I will argue, would be in a much stronger position to force the president to accept a deal on their terms if it waits until 2011. They also will deal, I believe, with the alternative minimum tax issue as well as the Medicare patch. On the funding of government front, it's my view that either they will pass a continuing resolution that will fund the government until late next quarter or the beginning of the second quarter, or figure out something that lasts throughout the entire fiscal year until September 30th of 2011, with or without the debt ceiling increase. And House Republicans will have to decide now on whether they want a clean slate to begin professed goals of reducing taxes and cutting government spending when they take over control of the House. Now let's shift gears a bit and look at 2011, the 112th Congress and beyond. The tables will be turned. Republicans will control the House of Representatives by a significant margin with a Senate Republican caucus now of 47 seats. It will become much more difficult for Senate Majority Leader Reid to muster the 60 votes required to do, frankly, anything. And the president, of course, will still hold the veto pen. Now, I worked for President George H.W. Bush. Both houses were controlled by Democrats, and he used the veto power quite a bit, indeed 23 times during my 3 years of service. And I might add that we were never overridden during those 3 years. First time I left, he got overridden, but that has nothing to do with me, which I remind him of frequently. In 1946, when President Truman's party lost control of both houses, he made radical proposals in civil rights, on health care reform, which landed with like a big thud on the steps of the 90th Congress. And he ran against a do-nothing Congress and was reelected in 1948. He chose confrontation in terms of how to respond to what happened to him in his midterm elections, the first of his 2 terms. In 1954, when President Eisenhower his party lost control of both houses, he was resoundingly reelected, and that was frankly when the Office of Legislative Affairs that I ran was created. In 1994, when President Clinton's party lost control of both houses, he cruised to reelection. President Clinton chose compromise, and he worked with Republicans on modest legislative matters that appealed to the middle class, such as Medicare reform. I do believe, as many others, that Republicans also overreached when they came into power for the first time in 40 years. That, plus the dramatic shutdown of government, were substantial factors in President Clinton's successful landslide reelection. But this is not 1994. In 1994, unemployment was at 5.6%, as opposed to 9.6%. In 1994, the nation's debt was $4.7 trillion, as opposed to $14 trillion. In late 2008, after the country's economy appeared to be on the brink of collapse, the government stepped in to try to stem the tide. And once President Obama was elected, and when he ultimately took office, he began by proposing and getting enacted a massive stimulus bill that was described as a basis for job creation. And he then began focusing on health care and later on financial institutions reform. Meanwhile, back on the home front, however, a couple of ladies began a little movement in February that swept across the country, culminating in a quest for change. I think the 2008 election was a change election. Voters were weary of 2 wars. They were weary of the financial meltdown that occurred in September of 2008. They were weary of government bailouts of banks and automobile manufacturers and even an international insurance company. And in some measure, the election of President Obama, voters began to express their displeasure, their angst. Voters began to deal with a very simple equation. Things are bad, things are getting worse, so change has got to be made. And we will keep changing and changing and changing until things get better. Now, we now know this movement as the Tea Party, or some version of the Tea Party. People were either angry, they were filled with angst, or perhaps both. And indeed, Indeed, the 2010 midterms are a larger manifestation, in my view, of frankly what occurred back in 1992.